President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa says he's concerned that mining companies are increasingly looking beyond South African shores. But he says the sector, which employs close to 500,000 workers, is a sunrise industry and will grow. He was speaking at the Mining Indaba in Cape Town, and that's where we find my colleague Rofhiwa Madzena this afternoon. Good afternoon, Rofhiwa. So investors have been vocal about several issues, including uncertain policy and poor infrastructure. Did the president reassure them, especially about the ability to transition from fossil fuels?
Absolutely, Bradan, you're right. This platform over this week is being used to ventilate various issues and find solutions to these issues so that once again the investment climate within the mining industry becomes as strong as it was perhaps a decade ago. The president indicating that he acknowledges there are various issues, but the mining industry is arguably one of the most important industries in South Africa because it creates employment, it creates economic growth, opportunities, innovation, and it's not an industry that we can allow to wither away. But when it did come to the transition conversation, Bradan, the president realized that South Africa and the rest of the African continent have unique challenges, something that the Western world wouldn't know or understand. So it's hard to use a template that would be used by the Western world to transition in a developing continent because of our unique challenges. So he says we have to be realistic, and also we have to find ways in which we can do this energy transition that everybody's talking about in a sustainable way. Those are some of the insights that he had to share. Let's just listen in.
It is critical that South Africa, like all developing economies, be given the necessary development space, because we are still in development. And that space is absolutely necessary for us to be able to transition in an orderly and in a sustainable manner. Countries on the African continent need to be able to explore as well to extract oil and gas as they find it in an environmentally responsible and sustainable manner.
And Rofhiwa, on the matter of coal, we understand banks are getting tough on coal. What is the view of the Minerals Council of South Africa?
Well, this is a very interesting notion, Bradan, in that there are many banks out in South Africa at the moment who are looking to fund renewable energy projects. And this is because we are focusing on that just energy transition. So we did speak to one bank earlier on which indicated that a lot of these South African banks have a lot of cash to be funding these projects. It's just the regulatory environment that needs to be clarified in the way that these banks and the people they lend the money to will be working together in their renewable project space. The Minerals Council saying it is a big challenge, and this is something that they're still working on, but that the funding from the banks is going to be absolutely crucial if South Africa is to meet the targets that have been set by the DMR for 18% renewable energy in South Africa by 2030. But this is what the Minerals Council had to say further.
We are aware that it's a hostile environment for coal, but we have engaged the banks, and there are discussions about whether even the assistance that was signed in Glasgow can be used as part of in assisting the current coal mining companies to be able to transition to a low carbon future.
Now, Rofhiwa, some mining companies have had better success than others in navigating through government policies on renewables. However, there's an issue of infrastructure. Railways are being damaged, and this is a big challenge.
It's a huge challenge, Bradan. In fact, this was something that was zoned in on by the President and various other stakeholders. We did speak to Transnet yesterday, the CEO, Ms. Portia Derby, and she conceded that it's a huge issue and there has been somewhat of a neglect when it comes to the maintenance of our national railway infrastructure and the port infrastructure, and also called on to government to increase the resources in which they put into the national infrastructure, because it's an expensive exercise and it needs the weight of government behind it. But what's encouraging, Bradan, is that we are seeing increasingly the private sector coming onto the board and saying, we're going to help you out. Let's create partnerships, because at the end of the day, the export of these minerals that are being mined, Bradan, are what grows the South African economy. And if we can't get them out of the country into the countries that are buying them, it's a big problem. So we're hearing from companies like Exxaro, who's saying that they're working very closely with Transnet and related stakeholders to maintain and refurbish infrastructure so that the transportation of their coal, as an example, is done so efficiently. This is what Exxaro had to say about that.
Worked with TFR in terms of our Waterberg operations, where we invested in a loadout station to be able to improve the efficiency of handling coal and particularly loading it onto the trains that Transnet is operating. And we've also invested in new projects which were pledged as part of the President's investment conference. So there's been almost 10 billion rands that we've invested in the Waterberg to improve and increase our coal production as well as the efficiency of running the operations. And it's really Transnet, that we've been engaging with to ensure that we're able to fully utilize that infrastructure.
That's Mzila Mtenjane there speaking to my colleague Rofhiwa Madzena, and ending that update from the Invest in Mining in African Mining Indaba that's taking place in Cape Town. Now,